Hey there folks, this is Josh, Stoney Ridge Farmer. Welcome to another beautiful day here on the Stoney Ridge Farm. Fall is in the air, we've got cool weather, and today we're going to be cutting down some small trees here in this thick brushy area to make shiitake mushroom logs. So we're going to show you how it all works, exactly what you need to do to have success at growing shiitake mushrooms on your farm or your place or your little homestead. So come along as we have some fun teaching you how to make shiitake mushroom logs. All right? Woo!
Stoney Ridge, from Stoney Ridge, Stoney Ridge Farm.
So what better place to start this video than right here beside our old shiitake mushroom logs. And these are hardwood logs that we harvested about 3 years ago, and they've been producing shiitake mushrooms for about the past 2 years. What we're going to be doing is inserting these plugs, and these are 100 mushroom plugs, and this is what they look like, and you'll get to see them a whole lot more here in just a minute. But these are shiitake mushroom plugs. They come with a instruction manual. These are called Mojo plugs, but there are several sources. I'll post a link down in the video description. I've had good success with this company and they're out of Salt Lake City. So what we have here are shiitake mushroom logs that I cut, like I said, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and we've had some heavy rains, and whenever we get a heavy rain, we start producing more shiitake mushrooms. And you can see these mushrooms are starting to come in right there. They'll come in and they will blossom out, and all of these logs will be covered with big, nice shiitake mushrooms. Now, when you harvest these mushrooms, they're gonna come out as a bunch of mushrooms. So you can take a dehydrator and dehydrate these mushrooms, and they keep forever. And when you're ready to eat them, you just soak them in water for about 30 minutes and they plump right back up to the mushrooms and they lose no flavor. They're absolutely delicious. So first thing we're gonna do is get in this little area, and this is down by our waterfall area, and we're gonna cut out some trees that are undesirable, that we don't want. What I have found is that maple does a good job, and white oak and or red oak does a good job. We're gonna cut them into lengths. I'll talk about that, and I'll show you how we insert the plugs. All right, first things first, we're gonna drop the tailgate here on the Kubota, and we're gonna get out our saw. This is our Stihl MS 170. It is an awesome homeowner grade saw. We carry this saw on the Kubota a lot of times, and it's really lightweight. It's very handy. It's a good saw to have, and it's the best saw that I can recommend to a homeowner that wants to buy a good saw that uses it fairly infrequently. You can cut a load of firewood with this saw. It'll do a good job, but this is what the guy needs that just has a few trees in his backyard. It's clearing up some land or cutting maybe 1 load of firewood per year. So we're gonna fire up the MS 170. We're gonna put our safety gear on, and I'm gonna take you over here and I'm gonna show you the types of trees that we're looking for our shiitake mushroom logs. What we're looking for is a tree that's about 6 inches around. In other words, about as round, if you got a big old arm, about as round as your arm, or about as round as your leg, about halfway between your knee and your hip, depending on how slim a person you are. We're looking for logs about this big around and about 4 feet long, something like that. This tree right here is a red oak, and this red oak needs to go. You want to pick a tree that doesn't have a very coarse bark. If it has a very coarse bark, it's harder to hammer your plugs in. So we'll take a look at this tree real quick so you can understand why I'm cutting this tree. You can see it is bent over. It winds up like this, okay? Some people might call this a post oak. This tree needs to go. We want tall, pretty, straight trees for good timber like this, not what I call scraggly trees like this guy. You can see it's just kind of weaving through the brush. And what's happened is this was a tiny sapling and it got a lot of shade, so it grew up straight really fast. We're gonna knock this tree down, we're gonna cut it into lengths. Good deal. As usual, this saw cut like a champ. So we've got all our shiitake logs laid out here on the back of the Kubota, and what we're gonna be doing here is inoculating. In other words, we're gonna knock in those little plugs I just showed you. What we're gonna use is a 7/16 inch drill bit, and we're gonna go about every 6 inches. And what I'll do is 3 rows on each log. So 1 row here, rotate it, another row, and then another row, and then we'll knock them in and we'll cover them up with wax. We'll seal them off with wax, okay? Now you don't need to worry about washing your hands or anything, but you do need to know if you're gonna use different types of mushroom spores, only use one type on each log. In other words, don't mix mushroom spores with different types of logs. Before we start drilling holes, I want to talk to you a little bit about this. I've got some electrical tape and I've got my drill bit right here, and it comes with instructions on what size drill bit you're going to need. You want your mushroom plugs, if I can get them out of this Houdini plastic bag here. There we go. What you want to do, well, that's a good bag, is you want to drill in about as deep as the plug plus 1/4 inch. I'm going to take my plug, I see what depth I need to go, and I'm going to take some tape and tape around my drill bit, just like so. So now I know the depth that my drill bit needs to go, so I'll have it appropriate for my shiitake plugs. Then we'll go every 6 inches or so. This isn't an exact science, guys, just drill. Okay, so we got 1 row across. We'll just rotate it 1/3 of the way over and do it again. Then we'll rotate it 1/3 over again and do the last side. And we want to check and make sure we're just halfway in between there, and we'll drill them in. Now, we're all set up to start driving our plugs in to all these individual holes. This is the easy part. So you just take your shiitake plugs and you shove them down in your holes and you give them a little tap with a rubber hammer, just like so, just like that. And remember, guys, when this gets wet, it's gonna swell, okay? So it'll hold them in place, and you're gonna be putting wax over top of each one of these to seal them off. So probably put, I don't know, 15 or so per log, 15 to 20, and we'll rotate it over and we'll do it on this side. Now you got to be careful when you rotate that you don't flip it all the way upside down, because the ones you just drove in will pop right back out. So here are our holes. Okay, just gonna set them in there first, then I'll go back and drive them all in like they should. And they should be driven about 1/4 inch deeper than the bark. And the reason we use this red oak is because it doesn't have a very intrusive bark. In other words, it's not really, really rough. So we can get them down in there like they need to be. Hammer these guys down. Very nice. So that's 1 complete log. It took me all of 10 minutes. Now, the reason why you use a log that's this size is because it's so heavy and cumbersome. You'll be moving this log, so you may be soaking it in water at some point, and you need to be able to pick these logs up. That is why. You could do it in a much larger log, however, you're gonna have to move that log. So if you want to inoculate a stump or something like that, you wouldn't need to worry about that. Get our plugs in. Okay, and we'll tap them in. The instructions say, set your drill bit depth to 1.25 inches. I like to hit them extra hard right here so it kind of mushrooms out so that they don't fall out in transport. We're going to transport them up to the house where we've got our wax heating on the stove already. I find this kind of activity pretty soothing, pretty fun, pretty simple, and just interesting because you can watch these logs over about a year period of time. The first logs took about 2 years to bloom. I guess you call it blooming with mushrooms. The first logs took about 2 years, and you really got to keep an eye on them. So in other words, you got to know when your shiitakes are getting ready to bloom or to grow out of your log. So at about 12 months, you want to check on this about once a week and make sure, especially after a really heavy rain, or you can set them in water overnight, take them out, and they will sprout. Folks, there's a specific time of the year that you want to do this. You want to do it when the sap is not in the log. In In other words, you want to do it when the leaves start to fall. You want to try and do this before danger of frost. You'll have better success if you can get it about 3 weeks before the first frost. Folks, if this is your first time to the Stoney Ridge Farm, welcome to the YouTube channel. I appreciate you being here. Please consider pounding that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you here all the time. Lots of fun stuff going on our farm here. We've got a 200-acre old dilapidated tobacco farm that we're bringing back to a working cattle farm. It's gonna be great. We're up here at the house. Get the chainsaw out of the back of the Kubota here and we'll drop the tailgate. And the next step we're gonna do is we're gonna instill wax into each one of these little holes. We'll get you some close-ups. But before we do that, I wanna talk about placement of your logs because it's getting a little bit dark on us. So you wanna place your logs in a place that you go by frequently. You want it to be a shady spot, somewhere either on the edge of the woods or in the woods that stays fairly cool and moist, okay? So if you've got a place on your property that you're thinking about, that's a good idea. Or you can put them right beside your garden, put a big old tub of water down there, and that way you can soak your logs as needed. We won't need to soak these logs until it's time for harvest. So at about a year to a year and a half, probably sometime in the spring, a year and a half from now, we'll soak these logs overnight in water down in the creek, and then we'll pull them out, and 2 days later they'll be loaded with shiitakes. They will continue to produce shiitake mushrooms for years. And if you stack these inoculated logs on top of other logs that are not inoculated in a moist area, they will spread and you'll have shiitakes forever. Pretty cool. Let's get the wax. So this is specifically designed for wax. Our wax is in there, and basically it's like a double boiler system. So I have warm water, or almost nearly boiling water, and I have an El Cheapo paintbrush, and we'll just take that paintbrush and we'll dab it into the wax and we'll dab it on to our inoculated logs. Okay, so a little dab will do you. You want to make sure we've got cardboard laid out right here because I know this gets messy. We just dab it right on there, and you can see that wax starting to dry. You can err on the side of putting a whole lot of wax on there if you want to. You can see, I'll get you a little close up here, just like that. Just dab it on there. You can use a sponge type brush, but just go get a cheapy brush from the dollar store or whatever, and you just dab it on there, and that's it. Boop, 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 all the way down. Here's a close up of what we're doing. Just dab it on there. Very, very easy. Very simple. And just slide it out, dab a little more. You just want to fill in that crevice right there so that you don't get any contamination and you don't lose your spores. So folks, I got some work to do, but I hope you enjoyed learning how to inoculate logs to grow your own shiitake mushrooms. If you buy the kit comes with 100 plugs. If it were me, I'm gonna order 4 more kits, okay? So go ahead and you spend $100 and you get shiitake mushrooms forever. You can share them with your family, you can share them with your neighbors, you can sell them. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with shiitake mushrooms. A lot of people make a living with them, but that's how you inoculate logs for shiitake mushrooms. Who knows? We might be making a living at this one day. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next time on the Stoney Ridge Farm. All right?
Well, come on down to the Stoney Ridge, bring your wife.